Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. I have been reading a lot this month, far more than I thought I would, and so I thought I would just make a video, not a complete wrap-up of everything I've read this month, but just of the specific things I've read that I would like to talk about. And in this video it's going to be 3 books, which I have grouped together because they all contain awesome, queer, badass female protagonists, and I was very, very happy about that. So I thought I would talk about these 3 books in the context of them all being strong female protagonists. So I will go in the order that I read them. First of all, I read You Should See Me in a Crown by Leah Johnson. You will probably have heard of this book if you've been on BookTube within the last year. It was a really big deal when it came out, and justifiably so. Again, I had a little bit of my I'm not like other girls thing where I was like, this book is popular, so I don't know if I'll like it, because, you know, I can't really trust popular books. But actually, I was really, really pleasantly surprised by this book and by how good it is. This is the story of Liz, who is a black girl who lives in a small town and who is desperate to move away. She wants to go to this really prestigious music college, but at the beginning of the book she finds out that she hasn't made it onto the scholarship programme, and so she has no way of going. Her family is incredibly poor. Her mum is dead, her dad is out of the picture, she lives with her 2 grandparents, and her brother has sickle cell anemia, which is also what killed her mum, and so she is in a very, very poor family who are just doing the best they can to get by. So she goes, music college is no longer an option, what do I do? And then she remembers that her school makes prom season a massive deal, and they offer a scholarship to their prom king and queen so that they can go to whatever college they like. And so she decides, with some coaxing from her friends, that she will enter for prom queen in order to get this scholarship. And so begins a madcap scramble for her to try and make herself popular, to try and make herself what the school will want in a prom queen, without giving up her identity and her passions. And it is so fun. I think my main reservation with this is because the premise of the plot is quite shallow, really. It's about a black girl running for prom queen and doing her best to be acceptable, and I think I'd worried that it would end up being quite surface level, quite basic. You know, she has a female love interest, which is excellent, but I thought it wouldn't really go much deeper than that. But I was so happy to see that this book is instead a huge takedown of white privilege and of patriarchy and of queerphobia. Liz is so cool. She's great, and I love reading this sort of very Mean Girls-esque hijinks scenario with the prom running, because this school takes prom so seriously and it makes it absolutely hilarious because everything is done with so much gusto and drama, and Liz is just there rolling her eyes going, okay, fine, I'll play along. I was really surprised by how genuine and deep this was on a lot of levels as well, because briefly at the beginning Liz talks about how she lost one of her childhood best friends because he decided to go down the popular route and stop being friends with her because she wasn't popular, and that hit her really, really hard as an anxious black girl who was just trying to get along. And so when she ends up being paired up with him for a lot of the prom committee activities, there's a really, really interesting friendship that redevelops between the 2 of them, and I thought it was a really excellent exploration of the ways that relationships develop and evolve over time, and how you can actually reconnect with people, which I thought was excellent. There's also some drama that goes on with her best friend, Gabby, I think her name is, which I wasn't expecting, but again was really, really refreshing. A lot about forgiveness and accepting people for their mistakes, which I thought was brilliant. And of course her love interest, Mac. This is said in the blurb that they will be love interests, so I don't feel like it's spoilers, but Mac is such a fun, lively character, and you really see that she and Liz will work together, and I really, really loved their relationship. It was so genuine and warm and funny, and it was a credit, I think, to queer romances written especially for black protagonists, and I thought it was just really, really fun. It was so warm and loving. It felt like a real ode to smashing down white privilege, smashing down the patriarchy, but also being able to find joy in taking over these aspects of society that have oppressed people for so long. Liz is able to find new aspects of herself to love. She's able to reassess her identity and not discard things about herself, but to embrace new things about herself, which I thought was really, really cool. And generally, I think this book deserves all of the hype it gets for being a black story, a queer story, but more than anything for packaging it all in such a fun, warm book that doesn't take away any of the seriousness of the topics that it covers, but for still making it fun to read. I really, really loved it. The next book that I read in this little collection I'm going to be talking about is Little and Lion by Brandy Colbert. This book came out a few years ago now, but it really came up on my radar when I was doing my bulk buying of Own Voices Black Literature, because I thought this sounded like a really interesting premise, and I was surprised I hadn't heard of it already, and then I remembered, oh yeah, white privilege, no wonder I haven't heard of this. Little and Lion is about Suzette, who is a black Jewish girl returning from boarding school after a year away from her family and coming home. Basically, she lives in a family where her mum is dating a man named Saul. They've been together for about 10 years at this point in the book, but they aren't married, so she doesn't call him her stepdad, but he is essentially her stepdad, and Saul has a son called Lionel. So Suzette and Lionel are essentially siblings, just not by blood, not by marriage, but they very much view each other as brother and sister. And Suzette has been away at boarding school because in the previous year Lionel was really, really struggling with his mental health, and he got diagnosed with bipolar disorder, and so Suzette's mum suggested that she move away for a bit to boarding school so that they could have the space to take care of Lionel, work out what his needs were, and give him the space to adjust to life as a mentally ill person and as a person on medication. And it's been really, really hard on Suzette. She did not like being away from her family at boarding school, but now she is returned for the summer to see all her old friends, to see how Lionel is doing, and to see how her family is doing. As part of that, she reconnects with her old friends, but in particular she meets a new girl called Rafaela who works at a florist's shop, and she ends up getting a part-time job there and developing a bit of a crush on Rafaela. But at the same time, she develops a bit of a crush on her childhood friend Emile as well. And so it really is a toss-up for her of, does she go for the girl or does she go for the guy? She's also dealing with some really difficult feelings about a girl that she was involved with at her boarding school named Iris, who really was the person who made her realise she was not straight. They had a bit of a friends with benefits situation that backfired enormously at their quite conservative boarding school, so she is still trying to deal with her feelings about Iris and about that situation and about her views of her sexuality as she is reconnecting with Emile and with Lionel, and while she is getting to know this new girl who, as it turns out, her brother also has a crush on. So it is quite messy in a lot of ways in that it deals with so many different things, but I thought this book was exceptional, if I'm honest. I thought this book was just beautiful. It deals with so many topics, but it does so in such a natural, fluid way that it doesn't feel in any way like there is too much going on. It is told from Suzette's perspective, so really you just see her dealing with all these people who used to be such a big part of her life now being part of it, with the memories of what it was like being away at boarding school and grappling with her new thoughts about her identity. It's not so much a struggle about her sexuality because she's pretty comfortable with the knowledge that she likes guys and she likes girls, but it's more so that she is unsure how to prioritise it really. She doesn't know whether to try pursuing girls or whether to stick with Emile, who seems like the safe, comfortable option for her. And all this time she is reconnecting with Lionel, who she last saw when he was really quite ill, was really struggling with his mental health, but who now seems to be doing so much better now he's on his medication. And then the kicker comes. He takes her on a walk one day and says, "Suzette, I don't want to be on these pills anymore. I'm going to throw them over the side of the ravine. I'm going to go cold turkey. I'm going to stop taking my medication. And Suzette manages to convince him to give her the pills instead, just so that she can hang on to them if he needs them. And she is worried by this. She knows what it was like when Lionel wasn't medicated, when he first started developing his symptoms of bipolar before, and she knows it's a terrible idea, but she doesn't want to tell their parents because Lionel's nearly 18, he's nearly an adult, and he knows himself best, of course, so she says nothing, she just deals with it and lets him try. But I thought this book was... I don't know how to express how excellent I thought this book was. The way it explores Suzette's numerous identities as a bisexual woman, as a black woman, and as a Jewish woman who wasn't born Jewish, but who converted because Saul, her not-quite stepdad, is Jewish and practices Judaism, but Lionel doesn't. And it was a thing that she did because it made her closer to this new half of her family, and because she was interested in the faith. But it's something that she grappled with when she was at boarding school because it was quite conservative and quite Christian. She didn't want to be out as a Jewish girl, as well as not wanting to be out about liking girls, and it was just phenomenal in the ways it explored these different identities of her, and in the ways it dealt, I felt, with mental health. This is something I've become really interested in since reading Up There, Beautiful Broken Things and Fierce Fragile Hearts, and this book. The idea of exploring mental health and other people's experiences of mental health through a removed party, through a friend or through a relative who cares about them, but of course is completely unable to do anything about it. I thought this was such an interesting way of discussing mental health and about responsibility and being able to take care of others, but in particular about the best ways to do that. Because of course Suzette cares so deeply about Lionel, and Suzette is desperate to do the right thing for him, but she doesn't know whether that is telling their parents and forcing him to go back on his medication because doctor's orders, or whether it's letting him trust his own intuition and stopping taking them. There is some really, really tense moments towards the end. My heart was in my mouth reading them. I was so scared and I was desperate for everything to be okay, and I just thought this was beautifully done. I also want to say, which I'll talk about a little bit with Amelia Westlake, I really appreciated how Suzette didn't cheat. Which sounds like bare minimum. I feel like it would have been so easy to make Suzette cheat at some point in this story. She and Iris were never official, and they basically ended things after boarding school, which was fine. But then with her feelings towards Emile, who she does start dating properly, and with her feelings towards Rafaela, who she knows her brother likes, and who it is clear she could have something with. I just really appreciated how Suzette weighed up her feelings, considered cheating on Emile at points, but that she didn't. There was no cheating, and that made me very happy, because it would have been so easy to do. It would have been so easy as well to make that an empowering story of a bisexual woman trying out an interest in girls, but instead she was honest. She was honest and loyal, and although her thoughts wandered, although she did consider it at points, that's natural, that's healthy, that's normal, and it wasn't... she didn't cheat. Thank God. I very much appreciated that. But yeah, I just thought Little and Lion was absolutely stunning in the ways it discussed so many aspects of identity, so many aspects of sexuality and relationships, but in particular the handling of mental health as something that develops day by day, as something that develops through very, very minute increments to the point where it's almost unnoticeable when someone is changing. I thought this was stunning. I thought it was exceptional, and I think everyone who has a friend or a relative or someone they know who struggles with mental illness should read this, because it is an excellent exploration of the differences between enabling and helping. And then we come to the final book that I want to talk about, and this is my least favourite of this group. Not that I dislike it a huge amount, but that I have more nitpicky things that I dislike about this that have affected my enjoyment of it generally, and that is Amelia Westlake Was Never Here by Erin Goff. This is the story of two girls named Will and Harriet. Will is the troublemaker, she doesn't follow the rules. In particular, she is a massive social activist, and her school hates how much she tries to subvert their pretty conservative, pretty limited rules about things. And then we have Harriet, who is a top student, she is a prefect, she is on the tennis team, she represents the school a lot, and she is a classic goody two-shoes. The story starts when Will and Harriet are in a swimming lesson together where their swimming coach, Coach Hadley, starts harassing a student quite openly in front of them, harassing her about her weight and about her qualities. And Will decides that she wants to do something about this, that this is messed up and that it shouldn't be allowed to happen. And Harriet is very much kind of, that's not the proper way to do things. We go through the right channels, we complain to the teachers, we certainly don't take matters into our own hands. However, through a bit more conversing while Will is in detention for calling Coach Hadley a prick after this, which, thank you, Will, they decide they are going to make a comic strip about what Coach Hadley has done and submit it anonymously to the school newspaper, which is run by Will's best friend Nat. And it gets published, and conversation starts about what Coach Hadley has done. He ends up being suspended for a bit, and Will and Harriet realise they can do something about this. They submit the comic strip under a fake name, Amelia Westlake, because Amelia Westlake is such a bland, generic but realistic name that no one will ever suspect that she is a made-up character, and that Will and Harriet can hide behind her in order to conduct all kinds of activism. And throughout this, Will and Harriet's relationship develops and they start to learn more about each other and they start to get on pretty well. I now need to go into the things that I disliked about this, because these were pretty major things, I thought. First of all, the writing of Harriet drove me up the bloody wall. Harriet is a classic goody two-shoes character. She's quite stereotyped in that way, and honestly, I don't mind fairly stereotyped characters so long as they're done well, so long as they're done with some kind of originality, that's fine. However, the writing of her in terms of this was done with two narratives, from Will's perspective and Harriet's perspective in first-person narrative, and the writing of Harriet's was so annoying. It was so stereotyped that I was literally rolling my eyes reading it at points because she sounded like, I'll just read. Let's just go for the opening of her first chapter. Chapter 2, Harriet. I adore my history class. It is one of the absolute highlights of my week. Today's class is especially wonderful because we are discussing defining moments. That is the first 2 sentences from her perspective, and what we know about her is that she absolutely adores history, whereas we've just had Will being a human being talking about how annoying school is and talking about how restrictive the institution is, and now we get Harriet being not even a human being, she's just a caricature, and that was what really got me, was the juxtaposition between Will being a really quite original character. I found her really interesting to read, and I very much liked her development, and then Harriet, who is literally a caricature, who has nothing really to offer. Will brings so much to the plot because she is such an original character, and Harriet just drags it down by being so basically written. And then my other issue with this is Harriet has a girlfriend. For the entirety of the book, she is dating a girl named Edie who goes to a different school. She gets involved with Will multiple times while she is still with Edie, and I'm not here to justify her relationship with Edie because it's not healthy, but doesn't excuse cheating, and especially I feel like if you're going to write a story about queer girls overturning an institution, challenging the systems that oppress them, don't then make them cheaters. I feel like it's a bare minimum thing to ask, but if you're going to set up this relationship to be the end game of the book, if you're setting up to be enemies to lovers, don't make them cheat. It just makes me go, oh, I thought you were all right, but Now I know you're not loyal to your partners, so how am I meant to root for you getting with someone else? I'm sure that is less of a big deal for other people, or as I said, it can be justified because Edie is such an unpleasant girlfriend, but it just didn't sit right with me, and it overall made me enjoy it far less. But generally, I did think this book was fun. It was, again, fairly light-hearted, but still kept the seriousness around the topics that it discussed. It was pretty good. I didn't hate it, and to be honest, I think that if you were less critically minded like I was, especially with regards to things like the cheating, and if you didn't mind how caricatured Harriet was, I think this would be a really, really good book in terms of the way it addresses institutional power and the ways that you can disrupt that kind of patriarchal white privilege system, but still doing it in an entertaining way, because the character of Amelia Westlake becomes a legend among their school, and it was really entertaining to read about the other characters going, I bet so-and-so is Amelia Westlake, no it can't be because so-and-so was in class with so-and-so, or perhaps it was like this because they clearly have links to this club or whatever. I found entertaining. It was just that it had a few too many downsides to it for me to enjoy, so I think I'll be saying goodbye to this book. I'm probably not reading it again, but equally, I liked what it had to offer in some areas. So yeah, those were 3 of the books that I have read this month. Again, I think that You Should See Me in a Crown and Little and Lion were exceptional, so good. Amelia Westlake, I think, is enjoyable enough if you are interested enough in those topics. However, I would say it has flaws that I picked up on and that spoiled it a bit for me. But yeah, I did want to talk about those, especially because I had read a string of queer, badass, female protagonist YA literature, and I feel like these in particular, Little and Lion, were underrated and need to be talked about more, so yes. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed hearing me talk about these books. Please like this video if you liked it. Comment down below, have you read any good female protagonist books recently? Because I am all here for diverse, interesting, original female protagonists, of course, as a diverse, original female protagonist myself. So if you have any particularly good recommendations, especially if you've got something as underrated as I found Little and Lion, then please share, because I'm all about that. Feel free to subscribe if you want to see more of my bookish content. Thanks for watching. I will see you next time. The words feel like they're coming too easy, which is ridiculous, but I'm just there like, I feel like I'm being too articulate. I feel like I'm doing too well. Something needs to go wrong. Isn't it weird that that shoulder has to be forwards for the balance to be right? Anyway, that was a lot of talking.